My name is Delilah Hoffman and I'm 32 years old. After a fire destroyed my home and left me with severe lung damage, I became the unwanted guest in my parents' house, sleeping in a storage room while my younger sister Madison mocked my every breath. When my father snapped and gave me 72 hours to find work or get out on the street, I was desperate enough to accept any job. That's how I became the caregiver for Marcus Sterling, a paralyzed billionaire who everyone said had lost his mind after his helicopter crash. But on my very first night in his penthouse, I froze when he handed me documents that had nothing to do with caregiving, strategic plans worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "Tell me what you think," he said. And I realized this was no ordinary job. 6 months later, my greedy sister, who'd humiliated me for being just a servant, came crawling back. But by then, the tables had turned in ways she never saw coming. Before I reveal what happened at that shocking charity gala, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this kind of story. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is right now in your corner of the world. This is the story of how the worst night of my life became my greatest opportunity. 6 months before that gala, my life was completely different. On September 3rd, 2024, at 2:47 a.m., I woke to the sound of fire alarms screaming through Riverside Towers, my apartment building in downtown Seattle. By the time I reached the stairwell, thick black smoke had already filled the hallways. I made it out, but barely. The fire destroyed 31 units. 47 people were hospitalized. I was one of them, with 40% lung damage from smoke inhalation. The doctors at Harborview Medical Center told me I'd need at least 6 months of recovery, possibly longer. My entire life, 10 years of professional certifications, client records, personal belongings, gone. The only thing that survived was my phone, clutched in my hand as paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. The medical bills came fast. $280,000 for 3 weeks in the ICU, respiratory therapy, and ongoing treatments. My insurance covered barely a third. As a physical rehabilitation specialist who'd built her practice on helping others recover, I now couldn't even climb a flight of stairs without gasping for air. When Dr. Martinez said I needed 6 months of recovery, I had no idea my family would see those 6 months as freeloading. My savings, meant for buying my first home, evaporated within weeks. My clients couldn't wait. They needed consistent care I couldn't provide. One by one, they found other therapists. The morning I was discharged, September 20th, I sat in a wheelchair at the hospital entrance, waiting for my parents to pick me up. I'd lost everything, but at least I had family. Or so I thought. The ride to my parents' house in Bellevue was silent, except for my occasional coughing. My father, Robert, drove with his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the road. My mother, Patricia, kept glancing back at me with a mixture of pity and something else, embarrassment maybe. When we pulled into their circular driveway, Madison's white Tesla was already there. Through the window, I could see her in what used to be my childhood bedroom, now converted into her home office. She was on a video call, gesturing animatedly, her marketing director title plate visible on the desk. "It's temporary," my father said before I even stepped inside. "Not welcome home or we're glad you're safe, just temporary." Madison ended her call and emerged, designer heels clicking on the marble floor. "Oh, you're here," she said, looking me up and down. I was still in the hospital discharge clothes. A volunteer had donated them. "I just closed a $5 million contract with Sterling Industries. Their CEO wants our firm to handle their entire corporate social responsibility campaign." She paused, smile widening. "Anyway, I moved some things around in the guest room. Well, the storage room. Mom uses it for her crafting supplies, but there's a couch that pulls out." My mother finally spoke. "Madison's been so helpful while you were away. She even helped reorganize your father's home office." Madison laughed, a tinkling sound that made my chest tighten, and not from the lung damage. "Well, someone has to keep things running smoothly. Right, Delilah? Though I guess you're back to square one again. At least there's always the guest room. The subtext was clear. Madison belonged here. I was the visitor. That first dinner back home told me everything about where I stood. Madison dominated the conversation, describing her latest wins while my parents hung on every word. "The board is considering promoting me to senior director," she announced, cutting into her salmon. "I'd be the youngest in the company's history. Isn't that right, Dad?" My father beamed. 29 years old and already managing 50 million in accounts. When I was CEO at First National, we didn't see talent like that until people hit 40. I pushed food around my plate, each breath still an effort. 10 years I'd spent building my physical therapy practice, helping stroke victims walk again, teaching accident survivors to reclaim their lives. But to them, I was just someone who took care of old people. "Delilah, you should really consider Madison's field," my mother said quietly. "Marketing is so much more substantial. Maybe when you're feeling better, Madison could help you put together a resume?" Madison's phone buzzed. "Oh, another LinkedIn notification. I swear, ever since that Forbes 30 under 30 mention, recruiters won't leave me alone." She glanced at me. "You still have LinkedIn, right? Or did that get lost in the fire too?" I excused myself, claiming fatigue. As I walked to the storage room, my room, I heard my father say, "If only Delilah had half of Madison's drive." My mother's response was worse because it was whispered, but I still heard it. "Maybe this will finally push her to achieve something real." But that wasn't even the worst part of coming home. The worst was yet to come. 5 days after I'd moved back, my father summoned me to his home office. It was Wednesday, September 25th, 9:00 a.m. sharp. He still ran his retirement like a business. Madison stood beside his desk, her expression unreadable. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair across from him. The same chair where he'd lectured me about my poor life choices when I chose physical therapy over business school. "Delilah, you've been here 5 days," he began, fingers steepled. "Patricia and I have discussed your situation." My situation. Like I was a problem to be solved, not his daughter recovering from trauma. "You have two options," he continued. "Find employment within 72 hours, or find somewhere else to live." The words hit harder than the smoke that had damaged my lungs. "Dad, I can barely walk upstairs. My doctor said—" "Doctors say a lot of things. Madison had appendicitis last year and was back at work in a week." Madison nodded sagely. "It's about mindset, really. I've been telling Dad that tough love might be what you need. Comfort enables weakness." "I have lung damage," I said, voice cracking. 40% capacity. This isn't about mindset." "Excuses," my father interrupted. "You've been making them your whole life. Failed engagement, failed business expansion, and now this." Madison suggested, and I agree, that enabling you further would be cruel. Madison's suggestion. Of course. My father looked at his watch, a Rolex Madison had gifted him. "It's 9:00 a.m. Wednesday. You have until 9:00 a.m. Saturday. 72 hours. But where would I even— That's not my concern. Madison found her first job in 3 days fresh out of college. Surely with your experience, you can manage something." Madison's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. "Oh, another headhunter. They're offering 300K base." She looked at me with false sympathy. "I'm sure something will turn up for you. Maybe medical reception? They usually sit down." I stood to leave, legs shaking. At the door, my father added, "The clock's ticking, Delilah. Don't waste time feeling sorry for yourself." 72 hours. I had 3 days to find work or become homeless again. The next 48 hours blurred together in a haze of rejection and humiliation. I sent out 15 applications, each one an exercise in creative writing. How do you explain a 3-month gap when you were fighting for your life? "We're looking for someone more current," one hiring manager said over the phone, barely 3 minutes into our call. "Your recent experience seems limited," another emailed back within an hour. The placement agency was even more direct. Without recent references and with your health situation, we can't in good conscience recommend you to clients. My health situation, code for liability. By Friday morning, I'd expanded my search to anything: retail, food service, call centers. The response was the same. Either I was overqualified, underhealthy, or both. One manager at a grocery store actually said, "We need someone who can lift 40 pounds repeatedly. Can you do that?" I couldn't. I could barely carry my laptop bag without wheezing. 24 hours left. I sat in the storage room, scrolling through job sites on my phone, when Madison knocked and entered without waiting. "Any luck?" she asked, voice dripping with false concern. "Dad's already started looking at storage unit prices for Mom's craft supplies. You know, for when they need this room back." She left, heels clicking down the hall. I refreshed my email. Nothing. Then, at 11:47 p.m., something appeared on a specialized healthcare job board. The posting had been up for only 3 minutes. Sterling Care Services seeking full-time caregiver for private client. Medical background required. $150,000 annual salary plus full benefits. Immediate start. Must sign comprehensive NDA. Interview tomorrow, September 27th, 10 o'clock a.m. $150,000 for a caregiver position? Something felt off, but I had 12 hours left. I clicked apply. I read the posting 3 more times, certain I was misunderstanding something. Sterling Care Services, that was connected to Sterling Industries, where Madison had just landed her $5 million contract. The coincidence made my stomach turn, but beggars couldn't be choosers. The requirements were specific yet vague. Medical professional with rehabilitation experience preferred. Must demonstrate empathy, discretion, and adaptability. Physical requirements minimal. Focus on cognitive and emotional support. Comprehensive NDA required before interview. That NDA line appeared 3 times in the posting. Whatever this was, they wanted it kept quiet. I submitted my application at 11:58 p.m., attaching my certifications and a brief cover letter that didn't mention the fire, just that I was seeking new opportunities after a career transition. At 6 o'clock a.m., my phone buzzed. An email from Sterling Care Services. Please present yourself at Sterling Tower, penthouse level, at 10 o'clock a.m. sharp. Use private elevator bank C. Security will have your name. Bring government ID. NDA will be provided upon arrival. Penthouse level? For a caregiver interview? I dressed in my only surviving professional outfit, a black pantsuit I'd left at my parents' house years ago. It hung loose on my frame. I'd lost 20 pounds in the hospital. At breakfast, Madison was already there, yoga perfect in designer athletic wear. "Up early for someone unemployed," she observed. "Or wait, did you find something? Maybe Dad will give you an extension if you're trying." "I have an interview," I said carefully. She laughed. "Where? The senior center? They're probably desperate enough to overlook your situation." I left without responding. As I drove toward downtown Seattle in my mother's borrowed car, one thought kept circling. $150,000 for a caregiver was unheard of. What wasn't they telling me? Sterling Tower pierced Seattle's skyline like a glass needle. At the security desk, a guard checked my ID against his list, then handed me a visitor badge that read Executive Access instead of the usual Visitor. "Private elevator bank C, straight to PH," he said. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you." Mr. Sterling himself? Not HR? The elevator rose for what felt like forever. When the doors opened, I stepped into a penthouse that redefined luxury. 5,000 square feet of glass and steel, with panoramic views of Elliott Bay and Mount Rainier. But what struck me most was the medical equipment, seamlessly integrated into the space. Parallel bars along one wall, a state-of-the-art wheelchair, monitors displaying vital signs. "Ms. Hoffman?" The voice came from the main living area. Marcus Sterling sat in a custom wheelchair, impeccably dressed despite being paralyzed from the waist down. His eyes were sharp, calculating, nothing like the broken billionaire the tabloids had described after his helicopter crash 6 months ago. "You're wondering why a caregiver position pays $150,000, he said without preamble. Sit, let's see if you're worth it. For the next hour, he grilled me, not about my resume, but about scenarios. A patient refuses medication that would help them because they're too proud. How do you handle it? You discover your employer is making financial decisions while heavily medicated. What's your responsibility? Someone you're caring for asks you to lie to their family. Do you? I answered honestly, drawing from 10 years of experience. When he asked about my employment gap, I told the truth about the fire, the lung damage, everything. He wheeled closer. Your sister Madison works with my company. My heart sank. Of course he knew. Of course She's talented, he continued, studying my reaction. Very concerned about image, status, perception. Spent 20 minutes at our last meeting explaining why her family's connections made her ideal for the Sterling account. He paused. She mentioned a sister who was between opportunities. Her words, not mine. The humiliation burned, but I kept my face neutral. I don't need someone perfect, Ms. Hoffman. I need someone who understands what it's like to lose everything and still show up. Can you start Monday? Yes, I said without hesitation. Good. There's more to discuss, but first, he handed me a folder. The NDA. What you'll learn here goes far beyond typical caregiving. My first day, October 1st, started normally enough. I arrived at 8 o'clock a.m., helped Marcus with his morning routine, managed his medications. But by noon, things shifted in ways I hadn't expected. I need you to review these, Marcus said, gesturing to a stack of documents on his desk. They weren't medical records. They were strategic plans for Sterling Care Foundation, his charitable organization. Mr. Sterling, I'm not sure Just tell me what you think. Pretend you're a patient. What would you want from a foundation claiming to help people? I spent 3 hours reading through proposals for healthcare initiatives, disability services, recovery programs. My suggestions came naturally. Who better than someone currently struggling with medical debt and recovery to spot the gaps? At 3 p.m., he had me sit in on a board meeting via video. My camera stayed off, but I listened as executives discussed million-dollar allocations. Marcus occasionally muted his mic and asked my opinion. This isn't typical caregiver work, I finally said. No, he agreed. It's not. The badge they'd issued me caught my eye where it lay on the desk. Under the standard text, barely visible, was a code. SF CEO pending. I didn't ask what it meant. That evening, as I helped Marcus prepare for dinner, he said something that stayed with me. Your sister told my board that success runs in her family, that her sister, you, chose an easier path in healthcare. He looked at me directly. She has no idea who you really are, does she? Most people don't, I admitted. Good, keep it that way for now. Tomorrow, we'll review the foundation's expansion plans. I want your input on the rehabilitation centers. This definitely wasn't normal caregiving, but for the first time in months, I felt valued. 2 weeks into my new position, the inevitable happened. I was leaving Sterling Tower after a particularly long day when Madison appeared in the main lobby, strutting out of a marketing meeting. She stopped mid-stride, her Prada heels clicking to a halt. Delilah? What are you doing here? Working, I said simply, moving toward the exit. But Madison wasn't done. She raised her voice, ensuring the cluster of Sterling Industries employees nearby could hear. Oh my God, you're the caregiver. Marcus Sterling's caregiver. She laughed, the sound echoing off the marble walls. From physical therapist to servant. That's quite the career trajectory. The employees turned to stare. Some pulled out phones. I provide healthcare services, I said quietly. Healthcare services, Madison repeated mockingly. Is that what we're calling it? Wait until I tell Dad. He'll be so proud. His daughter emptying bedpans for the man whose company I just secured $5 million from. She whipped out her phone and snapped a photo of me in my scrubs. Within seconds, I knew it would be on the company's Slack with some humiliating caption. Ms. Hoffman. The voice came from behind us, sharp, authoritative. A security guard approached. Mr. Sterling is ready for you in the private elevator. Your executive clearance, ma'am. Madison's expression flickered. Executive clearance? For a caregiver? The guard ignored her, escorting me to elevator bank C, the one Madison, despite her contracts, had never been authorized to use. As the doors closed, I saw her standing there, mouth slightly open, phone still in hand. That night, Marcus mentioned the incident casually. Security reported an altercation in the lobby. My sister was just making a scene about you being a servant? He pulled up his tablet, showing Madison's Slack message. My sister, the fallen therapist, now Sterling's personal servant. How the mighty have fallen. Charming, he said dryly. She has no idea what's coming. October 15th, 2024. Marcus called me into his library, a room I'd never entered before. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Seattle skyline as the sun set, painting everything gold. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Not as a caregiver, as a colleague. My pulse quickened. Mr. Sterling, Marcus, and what I'm about to propose requires complete honesty. Can you give me that? I nodded. Sterling Care Foundation has a problem, he began. $500 million in assets, 50 programs nationwide, and we're hemorrhaging money, not through corruption, but incompetence. Our current CEO treats it like a vanity project. He's retiring in 6 months, and the board wants my recommendation for replacement. He wheeled closer. In 2 weeks, you've identified more operational failures than our consultants found in 6 months. Your suggestions on the rehabilitation center proposals would save us $3 million annually while actually helping more people. I was just offering my perspective. Exactly. The perspective of someone who's been a patient, a provider, and now someone who understands loss. He pulled out a folder. I'm offering you the position, CEO of Sterling Care Foundation, $350,000 annual salary plus equity options. The room spun. I'm not qualified. You have an MBA you never mentioned, correct? Before you specialized in physical therapy? I stared. How did he know? I investigate everyone who works closely with me, he said simply. You're overqualified for caregiving, perfectly qualified for this. But there's a condition. Of course there was. 6 months trial period. During that time, you continue as my caregiver publicly. No one knows about this appointment. Not your family, not the staff. No one. I need to see how you handle authority without fanfare, how you make decisions when no one's watching. And if I fail, there's a $100,000 penalty clause for breaking confidentiality. But you won't fail. He pushed the contract toward me. The foundation needs someone who understands what it's like to need help, not another executive playing charity. Why me, really? Because your sister represents everything wrong with corporate charity, image over impact. You're the opposite. The question is, can you handle being underestimated for 6 more months? I thought about Madison's sneer, my father's ultimatum, the storage room I called home. Where do I sign? Are any of you watching from a similar situation? When your own family becomes the most toxic presence in your life, please leave a comment and let me know. And if you want to see how Madison reacts when she learns the truth, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, the best part of this story is just ahead. October 20th, 2024, 2:00 p.m. The offices of Baker McKenzie occupied the entire 40th floor of the Columbia Center. James Mitchell, Sterling Industries' chief legal counsel, was waiting in a private conference room with 2 other attorneys. Ms. Hoffman, James stood, extending his hand. Marcus speaks highly of you. Shall we make this official? The contract was 40 pages long. SF 2024 01 was stamped on every page. As I read through it, certain clauses stood out. The appointee agrees to a 6-month trial period beginning October 20th, 2024, ending April 20th, 2025. During this trial period, the appointee will maintain current caregiving duties while assuming CEO responsibilities remotely. Breach of confidentiality before April 20th, 2025 will result in immediate termination and a penalty of $100,000. Upon successful completion of the trial period, public announcement will be made at the board's discretion. James explained each section meticulously. Your Platinum Executive Badge will remain inactive until April. You'll have full system access, but all your decisions will appear to come from Marcus's office. It's unusual, but Marcus has his reasons. He wants to see if I can handle the pressure without the glory, I said. Precisely. He also wants to see how others react when the truth comes out. There are certain board members who've been pushing their own candidates. Marcus believes a reveal after proven success will be irrefutable. I signed. The notary stamped. James handed me a secure laptop and new phone. Congratulations, CEO Hoffman, he said quietly. Your board orientation packet will be encrypted and sent tonight. Oh, and Marcus wanted me to tell you, the Foundation's annual gala is December 15th. He suggests you continue attending as his caregiver. It will make the eventual announcement more impactful. As I left, James's assistant handed me an envelope. Inside was an email from the board, dated that day. The Sterling Care Foundation Board of Directors unanimously approves the appointment of Delilah Hoffman as CEO-elect, trial period commencing October 20th, 2024. 6 months of secrets. But finally, I had power, even if no one knew it yet. The next 6 weeks were exhausting in ways the fire recovery never was. My days split into 2 completely different lives, and keeping them separate was slowly killing me. 5:30 a.m. Wake up in the storage room, review foundation reports on my secure laptop. 8 o'clock a.m. Arrive at Sterling Tower as Marcus's caregiver, help with morning routine. 10 o'clock a.m. While Marcus napped, I'd video conference with program directors nationwide, camera off, voice disguised as Mr. Sterling's assistant. 2 o'clock p.m. Back to caregiver duties, medications, physical therapy exercises, the tasks Madison would mock if she knew. 4 o'clock p.m. Strategic planning. I restructured 3 failing programs, reallocated $8 million in funding, and hired 15 new directors, all under Marcus's name. 7 o'clock p.m. Home to face my family's condescension. Still emptying bedpans? Madison asked one night at dinner, November 5th. I saw you at Sterling Tower again. My team calls you the help now. It's actually perfect. I manage $5 million of their money, you manage their owner's bathroom needs. My father nodded approvingly at Madison while barely acknowledging me. At least you're employed, he said, as if that was the best I could hope for. My mother stayed silent, as always. The pressure was crushing. Twice, I almost broke, almost told them everything. But then I'd remember Marcus's words. Power exercised quietly is power multiplied. By Thanksgiving, I'd increased the foundation's efficiency by 35%, launched 2 new rehabilitation centers, and secured partnerships with 12 hospitals. The board was ecstatic. Whoever's making these decisions deserves a Nobel Prize, one member wrote in an email I wasn't supposed to see. Meanwhile, Madison posted Instagram photos from Sterling Industries events, #corporateclimber, while I went home to my pull-out couch reviewing contracts worth hundreds of millions. Everything would culminate on December 15th. I just had to survive until then. December 1st, 2024. Madison burst into the house like she'd won the lottery, waving an ivory envelope embossed with gold. Guess who just got invited to sit at the VIP table at the Sterling Foundation Gala? She didn't wait for an answer. Me! Marcus Sterling personally approved the seating. I'll be with the board members, the mayor, everyone who matters. She turned to me with false sympathy. Oh, you'll be there too, won't you? In your professional capacity? Marcus mentioned his caregiver would be attending. Someone needs to make sure he has water or whatever. My father actually smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. This is excellent, Madison. Prime networking opportunity. These are the connections that matter. 500 guests, Madison continued, scrolling through her phone. Media coverage, live streaming for charity donors worldwide. I'm wearing custom Versace. What about you, Delilah? Scrubs? I'll manage, I said quietly. There's actually a dress code, Madison said, pretending to be helpful. Black tie for guests, though I'm sure they make exceptions for staff. That evening, Marcus confirmed what I already knew. The gala is where we announce, he said simply. The board agreed. Maximum impact, especially with media present. Your sister requested to give a speech about corporate partnership. I approved it. Why? Because she'll establish herself as the face of sterling collaboration right before we reveal who really runs the foundation. The contrast will be educational. He handed me an envelope. Your dress for the evening, Armani, if you're wondering. You'll enter as my caregiver, but you'll leave as CEO. December 15th. 2 weeks away. Madison would stand in front of Seattle's elite, claiming her throne, never knowing it was built on sand. And I'd be there, invisible, until the moment I wasn't. She has no idea what's coming, does she? I asked. No, Marcus smiled. That's what makes it perfect. December 15th, 2024, 7 p.m. The Four Seasons Ballroom glittered with Seattle's elite. 500 guests in designer gowns and tuxedos, champagne flowing, cameras flashing. The Sterling Foundation Gala was the charity event of the year, live-streamed to donors worldwide. I entered through the service entrance with Marcus, wearing the Armani dress he'd provided. Elegant but understated, appropriate for a caregiver trying not to outshine the guests. Madison hadn't seen me yet. She was holding court at the VIP table, her Versace dress catching the light, surrounded by 8 executives hanging on her every word. For an hour, I stayed with Marcus, ensuring his needs were met, playing my role perfectly. Then it happened. Madison's voice cut through the classical music, amplified by her proximity to the DJ's microphone she'd commandeered. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to meet someone very special. The room quieted. She pointed directly at me. That's my sister Delilah, over there with Mr. Sterling. She's his caregiver. You know, feeding him, cleaning up after him, all those little tasks. Delilah, sweetheart, come here. 500 faces turned to stare. Phones appeared, recording. I walked over, maintaining composure despite the burning humiliation. Everyone, Delilah used to be a physical therapist, but after some unfortunate circumstances, she's now in a more suitable position. Service-oriented, you might say. Madison's laugh tinkled through the space. Actually, Delilah, we need more champagne at the VIP table. Would you mind serving us? You're so good at serving. The executives at her table shifted uncomfortably, but Madison pressed on, drunk on power and actual champagne. Come on, don't be shy. You serve Mr. Sterling all day. Surely you can manage a few drinks for us. I picked up the champagne bottle. As I poured, Madison accidentally knocked my arm, sending champagne cascading down my dress. Oops, she giggled. But you're used to messes, aren't you? That's basically your job now, cleaning up after your betters. The crowd was silent, horrified, but unable to look away. Someone whispered, "This is cruel." But Madison was beyond stopping, her need to humiliate me completely overtaking sense. That's when Marcus's wheelchair appeared beside us. "Ms. Madison," he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Please remain exactly where you are. I have an announcement." Marcus wheeled himself to the front of the ballroom, where a small stage had been set up for speeches. Without asking, the AV team immediately set up a microphone for him. When Marcus Sterling wanted to speak, people listened. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "I hadn't planned to make this announcement until later this evening, but circumstances have accelerated my timeline. Madison remained standing where she was, a satisfied smirk on her face. She clearly thought this was about the $5 million contract, perhaps an expansion. Several of her executives straightened their ties, preparing for good news. 6 months ago, Marcus continued, I was looking for someone exceptional to lead Sterling Care Foundation into its next chapter. The foundation, as you know, manages $500 million in charitable assets and oversees 50 programs nationwide. The crowd leaned in. Madison's smile widened. She'd mentioned to everyone that she was being considered for a board position. This person needed to understand loss, recovery, and most importantly, the dignity of every human being, whether they're a CEO or someone struggling to survive. His eyes found mine in the crowd. The selection process was unusual. I wanted someone who could lead without ego, make difficult decisions without fanfare, and transform lives without seeking credit. He pressed a button on his chair's control panel. The massive screens around the ballroom lit up. For the past 6 months, this individual has been working incognito, restructuring our programs, saving millions in waste, and expanding our reach to help thousands more families. Madison whispered to her table. He's building up to something big. This is probably about our partnership expansion. Marcus smiled, not his polite business smile, but something sharper. During this trial period, they increased our efficiency by 35%, launched 2 new rehabilitation centers, and secured partnerships with 12 major hospitals, all while maintaining another role entirely. The screens began displaying documents, financial reports, program improvements, all dated from the past 6 months. Ms. Madison Hoffman, Marcus said suddenly, causing her to stand straighter, her hand moving to her hair. Please remain standing. This announcement directly concerns you. She beamed, certain her moment had arrived. The executives at her table began to applaud preemptively. You see, Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, you just publicly humiliated my new CEO. The ballroom fell silent. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Marcus spoke again, each word crystal clear through the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the new Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Care Foundation, Delilah Hoffman. The screens blazed to life with my contract. SF 2024-001, dated October 20th, 2024. My credentials rolled past. MBA from Wharton, I'd never mentioned to my family, 10 years of healthcare management experience, the rehabilitation centers I'd run before the fire. Then came 6 months of achievements, each meticulously documented with my digital signature. Madison's face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a fish gasping for air. The champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. This can't, she started. James Mitchell, Sterling Industries' chief legal counsel, stood from his table. I can verify the authenticity of all documents. Ms. Hoffman was unanimously approved by the board of directors 6 months ago. She's been serving as shadow CEO while maintaining her cover role to assess our operations from the ground up. Marcus continued, his voice now addressing Madison directly. The woman you just called a servant, who you demanded serve drinks to your table, controls $500 million in charitable funds. This includes, I should mention, the $5 million earmarked for your company's corporate social responsibility program. The crowd exploded. Phones came out, not discreetly, but openly, recording everything. The live stream chat, visible on a side screen, went wild with comments. But she's a caregiver, Madison sputtered, her voice cracking. She's been my caregiver, yes, Marcus said calmly. While simultaneously restructuring our entire foundation, she's helped me with my medical needs in the morning, then authorized millions in funding in the afternoon. She's the embodiment of servant leadership, something you clearly don't understand. The screens now showed a side-by-side comparison. Madison's LinkedIn boasting about her connections and family success, next to my 6 months of silent achievements, 35% efficiency increase, 3 million saved, 2,000 additional families helped. I, I didn't. Madison looked around desperately. Her executives had stepped back, creating distance. One was already on his phone. I could guess with whom. Ms. Hoffman, Marcus addressed me formally. Would you join me on stage? It's time Seattle met their new foundation leader properly. As I walked toward the stage, the crowd parted. Someone started clapping, then another, then hundreds. By the time I reached Marcus, the ballroom thundered with applause. Madison stood alone in the center of the floor, Versace dress glittering, tears streaming down her face, as 500 people watched her world collapse. Her phone buzzed incessantly. I could see the screen lighting up with CEO calling, over and over. One more thing, Marcus said as I took the microphone. That $5 million contract, it's under review. We don't partner with companies that employ individuals who publicly humiliate others, especially not when that person is family. Madison tried to speak, but no words came. Her carefully constructed image, the successful sister, the corporate climber, the family favorite, shattered in front of Seattle's most influential people. Her phone rang audibly in the silent ballroom. She fumbled for it with shaking hands, saw the caller ID, and went even paler. The CEO of her company. She declined the call. It rang again immediately. I need to. She took a step toward the exit, wobbled in her designer heels, and nearly fell. One of her executives, perhaps out of basic human decency, reached out to steady her, but she jerked away. This isn't over, she whispered, though the microphones caught it, broadcasting her words to everyone. You planned this. You and him. You set me up. No, I said quietly into my microphone. You set yourself up the moment you decided to humiliate someone you thought was beneath you. I just happened to be above you all along. Security approached. Standard protocol for disruptions at Sterling events. Madison saw them coming and fled, her heels clicking frantically against the marble as 500 people watched her run. The last thing we heard was her phone ringing again, echoing through the corridor as the ballroom doors closed behind her. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of congratulations and business cards. By 9:00 p.m., the video of Madison's humiliation and my reveal had been viewed 2 million times. By midnight, it hit 3 million, with the hashtag #ServantCEO trending nationally. My phone, silent for months except for family criticism, exploded with notifications. 53 LinkedIn connection requests from Fortune 500 executives, interview requests from Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and Bloomberg. A text from my old physical therapy mentor. I always knew you were destined for more. Marcus and I stayed until the last guest left, maintaining professional composure, but in the car afterward he said, "Check your company email." I opened the Sterling Foundation account. The PR director had sent a summary. Ma'am, we've received 500 plus donation pledges totaling $2.3 million since your announcement. Our website traffic is up 5,000%. Also, Madison Hoffman's company has officially withdrawn from consideration for the CSR contract, citing strategic realignment. Translation: Madison had been fired, and they were distancing themselves from the scandal. My personal phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, a screenshot from Madison's company Slack. Someone had leaked it. Effective immediately, Madison Hoffman's employment has been terminated for conduct detrimental to our corporate values and reputation. Then came the calls from my parents. 17 missed calls from my father, 23 from my mother. I didn't answer. Instead, I checked LinkedIn. My follower count had gone from 500 to 50,000 in 3 hours. Madison's profile, which had boasted senior director at Tech Corp, now read seeking new opportunities. James Mitchell texted me. Legal suggests you document everything from tonight. Your sister may attempt retaliation. But I wasn't worried about Madison anymore. For the first time in my life, I had the power, the position, and most importantly, the proof that I was never the failure my family painted me to be. Tomorrow, I'd deal with my parents. Tonight, I was CEO Delilah Hoffman, and that was enough. December 16th, 10 o'clock a.m. My parents called again. This time, I answered. "How could you do this to your sister?" My father's voice boomed through the phone. No congratulations, no acknowledgement of my achievement, just accusation. How could I do what, exactly? I kept my voice level, professional. Humiliate her like that. You knew she was at that gala. You planned this vindictive— I accepted a CEO position 6 months ago, I interrupted. Madison chose to humiliate someone she thought was beneath her. The fact that I wasn't is her miscalculation, not my vendetta. My mother's voice came through. They'd put me on speaker. But Delilah, she's your sister. You should have warned her. She lost everything. When Dad gave me 72 hours to find a job or become homeless, did Madison warn me? When she took photos of me in scrubs and posted them to mock me, did she consider I was her sister? Silence. "You've destroyed her career," my father said, his CEO voice trying to establish dominance. "No," I replied calmly. "She destroyed her career by publicly humiliating someone at a professional event. That it was her sister who happened to be the incoming CEO just made it worse. Any competent board would have fired her. You could fix this. Talk to Marcus Sterling. I run a $500 million foundation. I don't use my position for nepotism." That's the kind of thinking that created this situation. "So you're abandoning your family?" My mother's voice cracked. "I'm establishing boundaries. You abandoned me when I was at my lowest. You gave me 72 hours when I could barely breathe. Now you want favors because I have power? That's not how this works." "Don't be dramatic, Dad. You have 72 hours to think about how you treated me when I was vulnerable. The same 72 hours you gave me. After that, we can discuss whether we have a relationship going forward." I heard my mother gasp. "Delilah!" 72 hours, starting now. 10:14 a.m. December 16th. I hung up. My phone immediately rang again. I declined and blocked both numbers temporarily. If they wanted to reach me, they could email, like professionals, like the strangers they'd treated me as. Marcus had taught me something valuable. Power exercised quietly is power multiplied. But boundaries? Those needed to be loud and clear. Wow, Madison finally got what she deserved, right? But the story isn't over. How will my family react to these boundaries? And what did I learn from all of this? If you've ever had to stand up to toxic family members, hit that like button. Your support means everything. Let's see what happens next. Over the next week, Madison's fall from grace was swift and complete. The video of her humiliating me had gone viral, not just in Seattle, but nationally. Entitled "Sister Humiliates Caregiver, Discovers She's the CEO," became a cautionary tale shared in business schools and HR departments. December 20th, a former colleague from Madison's company reached out to me. "Thought you should know," she wrote. "Madison was more than fired. She's been industry blacklisted. 3 companies have already rejected her applications, citing reputational risk. Her LinkedIn shows 500 connections. Yesterday, it was 3,000. The concrete losses were staggering. Her $250,000 salary, gone. The luxury apartment in South Lake Union that my parents co-signed for? The landlord invoked a moral turpitude clause after the viral video. Her Tesla? Leased through her company, repossessed within 48 hours. But the social losses were worse. Madison's Instagram, once filled with corporate events and networking photos, went private after thousands of comments calling her out. The Forbes 30 Under 30 mentioned she loved to reference. They published an article titled, "When Nepotism Culture Backfires, Lessons from the Sterling Gala Incident." My mother called from a different number, bypassing my block. "Madison's moved back home," she said quietly, "into the storage room. She cries every night." The same storage room where I'd slept, where I'd applied for jobs desperately, where Madison had stood laughing about my fall from grace. That must be difficult, I said neutrally. Can't you help her? Some small position at the foundation? Mom, would you hire someone who publicly humiliated their own family member at a professional event? Silence. Neither would I. Madison made her choices. Now she lives with them, just like I had to. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Madison, who'd mocked me for being a servant, was now serving coffee at a local cafe, the only place that would hire her. December 18th, exactly 72 hours after my ultimatum. My father called from his office line, a number I hadn't blocked. Delilah. His voice sounded different, older, tired. Dad? I've been thinking. For 72 hours, as you demanded. He paused. I was wrong. They were words I'd never heard from Robert Hoffman, former bank CEO, the man who ran his family like a corporation. I lived through Madison because she was everything I thought success looked like. Young, aggressive, climbing the corporate ladder, just like I did. His voice cracked slightly. When you chose healthcare, chose helping people over making money, I saw it as weakness, as failure. And when I lost everything in the fire, I saw it as confirmation that your path was wrong, that Madison's way was right. He took a breath. I failed you as a father. Not just then, but for years before. It was more than I'd expected, but not quite enough. Dad, you didn't just fail me. You abandoned me when I was most vulnerable. 72 hours to find work when I could barely breathe. I know. Madison suggested it, said it would motivate you. And you listened to her over your own judgment? She was successful. You were dying? Recovering? Your daughter who needed help? Silence stretched between us. I don't need your apology, Dad. I need your respect. And that means accepting that my path, my choices, my career, they're valid, even when they don't look like yours or Madison's. The foundation work you're doing, it's impressive. It was impressive before you knew about it, too. When you thought I was just a caregiver, I was still your daughter. That should have been enough. You're right. Another first. Would you consider dinner? Just you and me? Maybe, after the holidays. And Dad, this conversation doesn't fix everything. It's just a start. I understand. But I wondered if he really did. Recognition born from success wasn't the same as unconditional love. Still, it was more than I'd had before. By the end of Q1 2025, my quiet work became very public success. The Sterling Care Foundation launched 10 new programs focused on fire survivors and respiratory rehabilitation, personal causes that now had professional backing. The numbers spoke louder than any family dinner could. We'd helped 5,000 families in 3 months, opened 2 state-of-the-art rehabilitation centers, and increased our donor base by 300%. When hiring, I specifically sought out people who'd been overlooked, those with employment gaps due to illness, caregiving responsibilities, or life catastrophes. They became our most dedicated employees. March 15th, Marcus called me into his office. The board wants to expand your authority. They're proposing you oversee our East Coast operations too. That's a billion-dollar portfolio. You've earned it. Your story, your approach, it's changed how people see us. We're not just another tax write-off for billionaires anymore. We're actually helping people. The Seattle Times ran a feature. From Ashes to Authority, How Delilah Hoffman Transformed Sterling Care Foundation. They interviewed families we'd helped, employees I'd hired, partner hospitals. Not one mention of Madison. My personal success was equally measurable. $350,000 salary, equity options worth potentially millions, a corner office with the same view Marcus had. I'd moved from my parents' storage room to a downtown penthouse. My lung function had improved to 90% with proper treatment I could now afford. But the real success? Every week I received messages from people who'd seen my story. Healthcare workers who'd been injured and written off. Caregivers who'd been mocked for their menial work. People whose families had failed them, but who'd found their own way forward. You showed us that serving others isn't weakness, one wrote. It's the ultimate strength. Marcus was right. Power exercised quietly multiplies. But sometimes that power needs to be revealed to inspire others to find their own. April 2nd, 2025. My assistant knocked on my office door. Ms. Hoffman, HR flagged an application they think you should see. I knew before opening it. Madison Elise Hoffman, applying for marketing coordinator at Sterling Care Foundation. A position 3 levels below her former title, paying $65,000. A quarter of what she'd made before. Her cover letter was professionally written but desperate between the lines. I bring 5 years of marketing experience and intimate knowledge of Sterling Industries' corporate culture. I'm passionate about redemption and second chances, values I understand the foundation embraces. Redemption. Second chances. 6 months ago, she wouldn't have known what those words meant. I followed protocol, forwarding it to HR with a simple note. Process according to standard procedures. No special consideration either way. HR's response came within hours. Application flagged for concerning behavior history. Video evidence shows inability to maintain professional conduct at foundation events. Public disparagement of foundation leadership. Recommendation: do not proceed to interview. They'd reached this conclusion without knowing Madison was my sister. Her viral humiliation had made her unemployable anywhere that valued professionalism. My assistant asked, "Should I send the standard rejection?" "Yes, no modifications." No, Madison would receive the same form letter thousands of applicants got. "Thank you for your interest in Sterling Care Foundation. After careful consideration, we've decided to pursue other candidates whose qualifications better match our current needs." That evening, she texted me for the first time since the gala. "You could have helped me. This was my last chance." I typed several responses, deleted them all, then sent. "I processed your application the same as anyone else's. The decision was made by HR based on documented behavior. I didn't sabotage you, Madison. I also didn't save you. That's what professional boundaries look like." She didn't respond. But my mother called an hour later. "She's desperate, Delilah. She was desperate when she humiliated me publicly. That was her choice. The consequences are hers, too." "You're really going to let your sister suffer?" "I'm going to let my sister experience accountability. There's a difference. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some people need to construct their own path forward, just like I had to. Madison would either learn from this, or she wouldn't. Either way, it was no longer my responsibility to save her from herself." April 10th, 2025. My mother appeared at my office without warning, the first time she'd ever visited me at work, anywhere. "Security said you had to approve my entry," she said, looking around the executive suite with wonder. "This is really all yours? Would you like some coffee, Mom?" She sat across from my desk, the same woman who'd stayed silent during every family attack, now looking small and uncertain. "I came alone," she said, as if that was significant. And it was. Patricia Hoffman never went anywhere without Robert's permission or Madison's company. "I wanted to tell you something." She pulled out an old photo album from her purse. "You at your college graduation, your first therapy certification, the clinic you opened. Pictures I didn't know she'd kept. I was proud of you. I was always proud. I was just scared of Dad?" She nodded, tears forming. 28 years of marriage, and I never once contradicted him. When Madison became his golden child, it was easier to go along, safer. And when I was dying, when I needed support, I failed you. I chose the easy path over the right one." She touched a photo of me helping an elderly patient walk again. You were doing what I never could, standing up, helping others stand up, and I let them tear you down for it. Mom, I appreciate this, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to know you, the real you, not the daughter Robert wanted or the sister Madison competed with. You. It was more than I'd expected from my perpetually passive mother. Okay, I said carefully. Coffee, once a week, just us. But if you bring up Madison's situation or try to guilt me, I won't. This is about us. For the first time in years, my mother smiled at me like she actually saw me. October 15th, 2025. Exactly 1 year since Marcus first offered me the CEO position. My life had transformed beyond recognition. I started each morning with yoga on my penthouse balcony, watching Seattle wake up. My lung capacity had recovered to 90%, though I still carried an inhaler, a reminder of how far I'd come. The medical debt that once crushed me was gone, paid off within 2 months of my CEO salary. My daily routine now: 6 a.m. yoga, 7 a.m. therapy session. Taking care of mental health was no longer a luxury. 8 a.m. arrival at the foundation, where I led a team of 200 people who respected me not because of my title, but because I'd earned it. The numbers told one story. Our foundation now managed $800 million in assets, helped 50,000 families annually, and had become the leading charitable organization in the Pacific Northwest. My personal net worth, including equity options, approached 8 figures. But the personal growth told another. I was dating Dr. James Chen, a pulmonologist I'd met in my support group for fire survivors. He understood trauma, recovery, and most importantly, respected boundaries. We took things slow, building on shared values rather than status or appearance. "You've changed," he said one evening as we watched the sunset from my balcony. "6 months ago, you apologized constantly. Now you own your space." He was right. I no longer said sorry for existing, for taking up room, for having needs. The woman who'd once slept in a storage room, desperate for approval, had evolved into someone who approved of herself. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Board meeting tomorrow. They're discussing promoting you to president of all Sterling charitable divisions. Ready?" I smiled, typing back. Born ready, just took me a while to realize it. From homeless to 8 figures. From servant to CEO. From desperate to decisive. The fire had destroyed my old life, but from those ashes, I'd built something far better. November 1st, 2025. A handwritten envelope arrived at my office. No return address, but I recognized Madison's handwriting. 3 pages, single-spaced, the careful penmanship of someone with too much time. "Delilah, I know you won't respond to this. I wouldn't either, but I need to write it. I was jealous, not just at the gala, but always. You chose helping people over making money, and everyone loved you for it. Clients sent you Christmas cards, patients invited you to their grandchildren's weddings. Dad never got Christmas cards from his employees. I convinced myself your way was weakness, because admitting it was strength meant admitting I was weak. Every promotion I got, every bonus, every accolade, none of it made me feel the way you looked when you helped someone walk again. When you lost everything in the fire, I saw an opportunity to finally be the only successful daughter. I pushed Dad to give you that ultimatum. I posted those photos. I needed you to be beneath me because I'd always felt beneath you. The gala was supposed to be my triumph. Instead, it revealed what everyone probably already knew. I was successful, but empty. You were struggling, but substantial. I work at a coffee shop now. Yesterday, a customer recognized me from the video. She said, "You're the sister who learned the hard way." She was right. I'm not asking for forgiveness or help. I'm just telling you that I understand now. Success isn't about being above others. It's about lifting others up. You always knew that. I'm 30 years old and I'm just learning it, Madison. I read it twice, then filed it in my desk drawer. No response needed. Some apologies were for the person giving them, not receiving them. Madison needed to write it. I didn't need to absolve her. Growth happens at different speeds for different people. Maybe Madison would find her way, maybe not. But it was her journey now, not mine. December 15th, 2025. 1 year to the day since everything changed. This time, I stood at the podium as host of the Sterling Foundation Gala, wearing custom Oscar de la Renta, addressing 500 guests plus thousands watching the live stream. Last year, many of you witnessed an unexpected revelation, I began, getting chuckles from the audience. This year, I promise no surprises, just results. The screens lit up with our achievements: $1 billion in assets under management, 75,000 families helped, 15 new rehabilitation centers opened. But more importantly, stories of lives changed, including my own. A year ago, I entered this room as a caregiver. There's no shame in that title. Caring for others is the highest calling we have. But tonight, I stand here as proof that sometimes the fires that destroy us also forge us into who we're meant to be. Applause thundered through the ballroom. Then I saw her. Madison stood in the back, wearing a catering uniform, holding a tray of champagne. Our eyes met across the room. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She simply nodded. An acknowledgement of the reversal, the consequences, the journey we'd both taken. I continued my speech without acknowledging her. No public humiliation, no call-out, no revenge, just professional focus on the Foundation's future. Tonight, we announce our most ambitious project yet, the Phoenix Program, providing free rehabilitation services to fire survivors nationwide, because everyone deserves the chance to rise from their ashes. Later, as I mingled with donors, Madison approached with her tray. "Champagne, Ms. Hoffman?" "Thank you," I said, taking a glass, treating her exactly as I would any other server, with respect but without familiarity. She moved on to the next guest. No scene, no drama, just two sisters occupying very different spaces in the same room. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who remembered last year, but no one commented. That chapter was closed. Marcus wheeled up beside me. "You handled that with grace." "There's nothing to handle. We're each where our choices led us." That night, Times Magazine announced their Power 100 list. I was number 47. Madison was serving cocktails to number 46. Life has a strange sense of symmetry sometimes. November 28th, 2025. For the first time in 2 decades, I hosted Thanksgiving. My penthouse dining room overlooked Elliott Bay, the table set for 5, my parents, myself, James, and his mother. Madison had prior commitments, though we all knew she was working a double shift at the coffee shop. My father arrived bearing wine, a gesture, not a power move. "Your place is beautiful," he said, genuine admiration replacing his usual criticism. My mother had made her famous sweet potatoes, the recipe she'd never let me help with before. "I thought you should have this," she said, handing me the handwritten card. A passing of the torch. The conversation stayed neutral: the weather, the Seahawks, James's research on respiratory therapy. No mentions of Madison, no comparisons, no remember whens that might sting. It was careful but comfortable, like a new friendship built on old foundations. "I read about the Phoenix Program," my father said over dessert. "It's brilliant, using trauma as a catalyst for systemic change." "That's Delilah's philosophy," James added, squeezing my hand. "Transform wounds into wisdom." My mother smiled, really smiled at me. "You did what I never could. You rebuilt yourself without anyone's permission." After dinner, as my parents prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. "Madison asked me to give you this." He handed me a small, wrapped box. "She said to open it alone." Inside was a silver compass, engraved, "You always knew the way, I just couldn't see it. M." I put it on my desk next to the photo from the gala. Not the one of Madison's humiliation, but one of me at the podium, finally standing in my truth. Some families break and rebuild stronger. Others break and rebuild differently. We were the latter, And that was okay. Perfect families don't exist, but healthy boundaries do. 1 year later, I understood something fundamental. Success doesn't fix family dysfunction, it just clarifies it. The fire that destroyed my apartment had actually illuminated everything. Who showed up, who kicked you when you were down, who you really were when everything else burned away. Madison and I would never be close. She'd learned her lesson about public cruelty, but that didn't erase the years of private cruelty. Forgiveness didn't require reconciliation. My parents and I had found a new rhythm: monthly dinners, holiday visits, careful conversations that respected boundaries. They'd learned to see me not as Madison's failed sister, but as Delilah, complete and whole. The Sterling Foundation had become my true family, 200 people working to lift others up. Marcus remained my mentor, teaching me that quiet power creates loud change. But the greatest boundary I'd set was with myself. No more apologizing for existing, no more shrinking to make others comfortable, no more accepting less than I deserved. The fire had taken my home, my belongings, my old life, but it had also burned away everything false: the people-pleasing, the self-doubt, the need for family approval. From those ashes, I hadn't just rebuilt, I'd been reborn. Thank you for staying with my story until the end. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by family opinion. Comment below with your own boundary-setting victories. I read every single one. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success paired with healthy boundaries. Until next time, this is Delilah, reminding you that you're enough exactly as you are.